Tonight on The Best Times, you'll travel 500 miles across northern Spain as we talk with two people who have made the physical and spiritual journey along the way of St. James. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plough Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. Retirement means different things to different people. For some, it may be playing 18 holes of golf in the morning, and then 18 more in the afternoon. It may be tilling the soil in your garden, or finally having the time to read the books you've always wanted to read. And for some, retirement means travel and adventure. Dr. Brian Simmons and his wife Barbara were looking for a retirement challenge. They found inspiration for that challenge in a 2011 film entitled The Way. It's the story of a grieving father's trek along the Camino de Santiago in northern Spain, a pilgrimage to honor the memory of his dead son, and a journey to find meaning in his own life. With this inspiration, Barbara and Brian Simmons set out on a nearly 500-mile pilgrimage along the way of St. James. The Camino de Santiago de Compostela, or the Way of St. James, is one of the three great Christian pilgrimages of the Middle Ages. The other two are to Rome and Jerusalem. Pilgrims followed many routes from all over Europe and converged on the town of Galicia and the Cathedral de Santiago, which contains the shrine of St. James, one of the 12 apostles. Christians in the Middle Ages made this pilgrimage to atone for and reduce the punishment for their sins. Some still make the journey for atonement and spiritual growth, but the reasons for traveling the Camino are as numerous as the 200,000 people a year that make the journey. Barbara and Brian's journey began on the French side of the Pyrenees, in a town called Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and traveled nearly 500 miles through northern Spain, ending at the shrine of St. James. Before we get actually into the journey and talking about the stories, I have to ask the question, why? Why did you decide to make this trek?
Well, Brian had decided to retire in September of this past year, 2015, and he said, you know, I'd like to have a goal, you know, to quit work after 30 years of private practice, and let's have a goal. But I sort of misspoke. This was over 2 years ago. He said, when I do retire in September of 2015, let's do the Camino. He always wanted to do that, and I can have him explain why he wanted to do it.
When did you hear about the Camino?
Oh, probably 3 or 4 years ago when we saw the movie The Way. And we wanted a physical challenge, a challenge in terms of keeping ourselves busy, having a goal, not just falling into retirement and not, you know, doing anything but look at the internet. So we did set that goal, and when I mentioned it to Barbara, who had no physical experience, she never was on a team or a sport or anything, she liked the idea and went into training and got herself ready.
Well, let's talk about that, because I'm going to have to tell our viewers that you have 2 artificial knees.
Yes, it'll be 10 years in July that I had them replaced. And
Well, let's talk about that physical preparation. What did you go through to prepare yourself for this nearly 500-mile walk?
well, he's quite a great trainer there. We decided to start walking. We live in Harbortown, and so we would walk along the River Walk, which is at Harbortown about 2 miles. And then we decided, well, we better try a little hill, so we started at the Auction Street Bridge.
That's a good hill.
Oh, and he would go right up the bridge, and I would be like, oh, I don't know if I can make it. So we started out that way, and then we thought, well, this isn't going to work, going back and forth across the Auction Street Bridge 8 times. So we ended up finally walking 2 miles to the Y from our house, and then walking on elevated treadmill for an hour, like at 5, on number 5, whatever
5 degrees of
5 degrees of elevation, and then would walk back the 2 miles. So it was 5 miles, and
That was a total of 7 miles, 3 miles on the
3 miles on the
treadmill, and
treadmill,
then 4 miles in the round trip walking. And we did that repetitively. It was then and another experience when we actually walked out to Wolf Chase Mall that we discovered I was blister prone. And that was important to discover because so many people on the Camino had blisters, and some of them actually failed as a result of blisters. You know, they can be very painful. And I found out and actually went to a podiatrist who helped me find a pair of shoes that were blister-free.
well, you have to realize by the time he found out he had trouble with his feet, we had been training for over a year. It wasn't until after doing these 7 miles back and forth to the Y, we said, well, we better do a longer walk because we knew the Camino, there were several days that we'd have to walk 20 miles in one day. And we thought, oh. So we figured out going out east to the
Embassy Suites.
Yeah, Embassy Suites or Ridgeway was 13 miles each way. So we thought, well, we'll walk out 13 miles, stay overnight at the hotel, and then walk back home the 13 miles. And that's when he discovered, after the 26
Well,
mile
it's good you did that
weekend,
training then.
Absolutely.
that, yeah, he
You
had
know,
problems.
5-mile training doesn't get you ready for the
No,
Camino.
not at all.
It was so important that I discovered I was blister prone because I was able to take care of it before it became critical to finishing the Camino.
Now, before your journey, did you have any expectations?
I don't know. I was very apprehensive. It was quite a challenge, and I thought, boy, I don't know if I'm going to do this. And I thought, well, I'll just take it one day at a time, one step at a time. If I had realized, though, all the hills involved, all the up and down severe hills we had to climb, I don't know. I know I can do them now, but
Let's talk about the route.
okay.
Because tell me where you started, because you started on the French side of the Pyrenees, correct?
Right. St. John Pied de Port, St. Jean. And that's where I think most pilgrims that are going to do the Camino Francais start right there. And so on the first day, you go right across the border. So it's a very small amount of time in France, but also by the time you get into Spain, you've climbed like 3,000, 4,000 feet.
Exactly.
It was a real challenge. That the Pyrenees are a true mountain range, and it really tested us. And for the first day, Barbara was lingering behind. She barely could keep up, and I started to worry. But dadgummit, she wouldn't give up. And I even asked her one day in the first 3 or 4 days, Barbara, do you want me to call a taxi? And she said, never.
What kept you going?
I thought, well, this wasn't supposed to be a pleasure trip. And I was doing it for religious reasons and to get in better shape. And I thought, no, I've made this decision, this commitment, and I'm going to do it. And as long as I don't get ill or get an infection in one of my feet or something, I'll be fine. I can put up with discomfort and it'll get better, and it did.
And by the end, she was climbing hills with the best of people. And she did it without even taking a break. You know, before it'd be like, 100 yards or 100 meters and then take a break. She just got so she'd scoot up the hills with the youngsters.
Well, we were always like the tortoise and the hare. He was the hare, so he'd get a little rest, at the top of the hill, and then I would be the tortoise and everything. But I'd always make it. I would slowly. And then we found out, gee, even though Barb's a little bit slower, I ended up being, I was pretty fast by the end. Even people that would just zoom by us, they'd stop for longer periods of time. They'd stop and have an hour lunch or something, and we just kept going.
Now the route, of course, it goes through mountainous areas like the Pyrenees, but it's quite varied, isn't it? You've got trails that are going through pastures, and then you're walking alongside busy highways, correct?
Exactly.
And I would imagine meeting hundreds, maybe thousands of other similar pilgrims taking the journey?
Yeah, we did, and we met many people from all over the world, and it was a very nice experience because everybody's sort of thrown in together with the same goal. They're all trying to help each other. There were Australians, New Zealanders, French, Spanish, and just some Americans, but American was clearly underrepresented on the Camino.
The people were very nice no matter what country they were from, and when we were first starting out, we didn't take any hiking poles with us. We decided against them for certain reasons. And people would walk by me and they'd go, "Oh dear, you don't have hiking poles and you have to go down this big hill." And I said, "No, that's all right. I've decided not to use them or anything." But they would have given me one of their poles to use. Or, "Oh, are your feet sore?" They were very helpful because we were all in the same boat. Some of them were very experienced hikers, but I guess I know of just one person that didn't have any difficulties, one person that we made friends with in the 35 days. Even experienced hikers, they ran into situations, blisters on feet or feet going into spasms.
Now, neither one of you speak Spanish, right?
No.
Did you have any trouble not being able to speak the native language?
No.
Very little. We could generally point, say a few key words, like menu.
Coffee con leche, coffee with
beer.
milk. Yeah.
Beer got to be a favorite phrase.
Or just beer.
In fact, we learned to love lemon beer, and we would be able to go to the bartender and say lemon beer. The people from Spain were just wonderful. That was one of the delights of the trip. Was even though we couldn't understand each other, they cared so much. No one turned their back and walked away and said, "I can't understand you." They were there until they figured it out, and when they knew what you wanted, they helped you get it.
In fact, there was a young lady, we were walking into the large town of Burgos, which has over 700,000 population, and it was ugly. We're walking through these desolate, industrial suburbs of buildings that have closed down, and we're walking and walking. It was a very long day, and we thought, where is our hotel? And we're trying to look at the map and can't figure it out, and we've walked so many miles into town, and this young lady came over to us. "Oh, is there a problem?" And would you believe, she took us to the local tourist agency and asked them, and she said, "Oh, come on." She took us right to our hotel. She just did it to be nice. It's a perfect example of how welcoming they are to the pilgrims.
What do you feel like was your most rewarding experience on the trek?
My most rewarding experience was when we got to Santiago and we went to Mass. It was in Spanish, so we couldn't understand it. But
Santiago, by the way, is the end of the journey.
Yeah, end of the journey,
make that clear, yes.
Yeah, Santiago.
So we were finished, but we hadn't gone to the Pilgrim's Mass yet, and they have one every day at around noon. And they had a incense container. What do you call it?
Boda Fumera.
Boda Fumera. And in the movie, The Way, they show that where they just rocks back and forth. And they did that, and it was so emotional for me to see that because it meant I had finished. And, this was it. This was sort of the indication that I had done well. The incense container apparently came from, the history was the pilgrims were so stinky when they came in
That's
that
right.
they used the incense
To fumigate.
fumigate.
And the incense container it's huge. It's massive. Takes 8 men pulling it with ropes.
What was your most rewarding experience?
Walking into Santiago and standing at the stone there in the square that says, "You have completed the Camino." It's like, gosh, I did it. And we didn't have to slow down. We knew of a few people who had to even change those who had reservations like we did had to change their schedule because they had injuries or they were exhausted and they had to slow down. But we stayed to our schedule, and we had some very long days, over 20 miles, about 4 of those. On an average, we walked about 14 miles a day, 35 days. And I just felt such a feeling of accomplishment.
Was there a point where you thought, I don't know that I can make this, that maybe we should quit?
There were several. I mean, when you're going, it's almost like having a good angel on one shoulder and a bad one on the other. And the bad angel saying, it's raining, it's below 50 degrees, you're freezing, you're miserable, you're going up a hill, it's full of mud, there's a torrent of water coming down the middle of the trail, and what are you doing? And the other one saying, you can do it, you can make it. And she was part of the good angel. She absolutely refused to give in to any very uncomfortable periods that we had when things were cold and you were just starting out. I mean, you might have 10 more miles to go and you were already miserable, but we just clamped down and did it.
Yeah.
Tell me about the cross, the story about the cross.
Oh, the Crux de Fer. Well, that was the miserable day. That was the day he's talking about when he got so cold. And it was a long trek that day. It was raining, not torrential rain, but just, we were climbing up to over 4,000 feet, you have to realize. And this constant rain, and our rain jackets, yes, kept the water off at first, but then you're expending so many calories that you're actually sweating inside the rain jacket. So you're soaked inside and you're soaked outside, and you're trying to be pleasant in that. It was a very difficult day, and getting to that cross to see, wow, I thought, Barb, look at all those little pebbles and little tiny gifts that were below the cross. People for all these years, hundreds of thousands of people have left these little pebbles or stones from their homeland or from Saint Jean, and I thought, well, if they could do it, you can do it. And today was very difficult, but you can complete this.
So it was sort of
It was
a
an
moment of renewal
It was,
for you.
it was, absolutely.
Yeah.
At the Cruz de Ferro, that is the goal. You're supposed to once again say, what is your reason for doing this to yourself, and then to redouble your efforts to get it done.
Yeah.
If it's spiritual, then you get into the spiritual aspect, you pray and so on, which we did, because ours was very much a spiritual
Yes, it
reason.
was.
Well, let's talk about that, because since the Middle Ages, of course, this has been a pilgrimage that has a spiritual purpose. You say there was a spiritual component. Talk to me about that.
I did it for certain prayers about my family and that I'd like to keep private, but it was spiritual to show, I don't know, recommitment with God, recommitment with actually our marriage. We found out we loved being together, even though the days, some of them were pretty torturous. And I carried my mother's rosaries with me the whole time on my belt. And when I would get frustrated, which I hid from him, there were 2 or 3 times that I just broke down in tears and thought, oh, I don't know if I can make that other hill. Boy, look at that big rocky hill, and oh, I'm so tired. And I put my hand on my mom's rosaries, and my mother never gave up when she made a commitment. she always followed through. And that kept me going.
And for you?
Pretty much spiritual, but there was also a physical. I can do this, you know. I'm not going to give up. And
Yeah.
I could have gotten rid of my backpack, but I refused. I wanted to.
Yeah, he
sort
carried
of
the pack the whole time.
do it all the way to the end. And the spiritual, we went to Mass a few times along the way. We certainly went into a number of gorgeous churches, including the one at Burgos, which is one of the most
Oh, that was fabulous.
beautiful
Yeah.
cathedrals I have ever seen. And that was awful inspiring as we went along, because we had a day off in Burgos, and we could really spend some time looking at the cathedral. It was very spiritually rewarding.
You know, I've heard the Walking the Camino being described as a life-changing event. And I'm curious to know what you may have learned. What did you learn on this experience?
As Barbara said, one of the things we learned is that we're able to get along even under the worst of circumstances. It's wet, it's cold, you're spending hours together in such pain that you can hardly walk, and yet you're helping each other out, helping each other over rocks, pointing out, you know, holes in the sidewalk and so on. Don't trip. It was very nice for our marriage. It was very rewarding in that aspect. How about you?
Well, the rewards are just, I really can't name them all. It was a life-changing experience for me. I will keep up the exercise. I can now walk up the Auction Street Bridge. It's a piece of cake. I mean, there's not much to that now, that little hill. But no, I learned a lot of patience and compassion too, because you're seeing people, a lot of them, under the worst circumstances. They're tired or they're in pain. In fact, that reminds me of one lady that we met from Australia. Brian made the comment, he goes, "Oh, that woman, she won't even smile, she won't even say hello to anyone." You know, she was staying at the same bed and breakfast and that we were a lot of the times, and we'd say, "Oh, good morning," you know, at breakfast. She wouldn't say a word. She just sat there and would sit by herself and eat her food. And we found out afterwards she was a charming woman, but the first couple of weeks she was in so much pain with her feet that she couldn't even talk to people. She finally got some help, I don't know where, maybe from a foot doctor or something in Spain. But she ended up being one of the friends that we made on the Camino, and it taught me too, don't judge people, because we thought, boy, you know, she's sort of a nasty person, but she was charming, but she had a tough time at first.
Both of you were on the same journey in a way, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And aren't we all? Yeah. Speaking of journeys, do you have plans to go back? Do you have further plans for your next adventure?
Well, some people have asked us would we do it over again, and if knowing what I know now, I would do it over again, but I won't repeat it. In other words, there's no plans to go back and do it a second time. But it was so rewarding that I would clearly commit once again from the beginning. We're thinking about hiking across Scotland, the Scottish Highlands. The same company that set up our trip this time to the Camino has a hiking trip across the Scottish Highlands. It sounds wonderful. Camping, huts along the way, and beautiful mountains and lakes in Scotland.
Well, go do that, and then we'll have you back on and you can talk about that. So thanks very much for being on The Best Times.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you.
Want more information about life after 50? Go online to watch more shows and find more resources. And send us your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. That's all for this edition of The Best Times. Please join us next week for more stories about life after 50. Until then, I'm Chris Hardaway. Thanks for watching. Good night. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you.